Beneath the surface of our oceans lies a hidden system that keeps our entire world alive. Thousands of fragile cables carrying nearly all global communication, and over $10 trillion every single day. If these cables were ever cut, even for a moment, the internet stops, money stops, civilization stops. Yet most people have never heard of them. In this video, we dive into the unseen network that controls modern life and the terrifying reality of how easily it can collapse. Join us for more eye-opening stories like this. Subscribe to Economic Mechanics and stay informed. Imagine waking up. Your phone won't load, banks are frozen, airports shut down. No news, no calls, no warning. This isn't a cyber attack. This isn't a glitch. This happens because a wire snapped in the dark beneath the sea. We think the internet lives in the sky, satellites, Wi-Fi, signals floating in the air, but that belief is a myth. The real internet lies underwater. Right now, 95 to 99% of the world's data, everything we send, watch, buy, or say, travels through undersea cables. Thin fiber optic strands running across 1.4 million kilometers of ocean floor. They are not thick steel tubes, not armored pipelines. Many are barely as thick as a garden hose. Inside them, laser pulses of light carry the global economy, carry governance, carry secrets. Every day, these cables move over $10 trillion in financial transfers, stock trades, credit card swipes, military commands, all racing through wires lying silently in the black abyss. People imagine the cloud is floating above us, but the cloud is actually in the ocean. Data centers connect to continents through these hidden lifelines. Silicon Valley, London, Tokyo, all bound together by glass threads no wider than a human hair. And those threads break, more often than you think. On December 26, 2006, an earthquake near Taiwan snapped multiple cables at once. Internet in South Korea, China, Japan, disrupted. Banking systems slowed to minutes, then hours. It took weeks to repair. Asia's digital heart struggled in silence. In October 2022, two critical cables near the Shetland Islands were mysteriously severed. Phones, banking, the internet, all cut off in a single night. Locals were isolated. A modern society dropped back into darkness. And in January 2023, a cable in Yemen failed during conflict. Millions lost access to the outside world. Hospitals couldn't order supplies. Journalists couldn't report. A war zone went blind. These are warnings, small glimpses of a future disaster. Because underwater cables aren't just communication lines, they are geopolitical weapons. During both world wars, British forces cut Germany's undersea cables to drown them in silence. No messages in or out. Total isolation. Today, the stakes are far higher. Our lives depend on something we do not see, something undefended, something that could be destroyed without a single explosion. A ship's anchor can rip a nation offline. A submarine can cut global trade before anyone notices, and if the cables failed, all of them, life as we know it would collapse. Communication gone, money gone, supply chains gone, trust gone. The modern world holds together because of fragile wires lying on the ocean floor in silence, in darkness, in danger. This is the hidden empire that keeps humanity connected. It is powerful, it is essential, and it is terrifyingly easy to break. But how did we build such a vulnerable foundation? How did these fragile lines become the most important structure in human history? To answer that, we must dive back to the moment the ocean first spoke, and the world changed forever. We look to the sky for technology, rockets, satellites, space stations, but the most advanced network of the modern age was built beneath the waves. The truth is simple. Satellites can't handle the world's hunger for data. They are slow, they are expensive, they have limited bandwidth. A signal to space must travel tens of thousands of kilometers, a delay the digital economy cannot afford, so humanity turned to the ocean. Instead of beaming our data upward, we decided to shoot light through glass, fiber optic cables, the veins of the internet. Inside them, laser pulses move information at nearly the speed of light. Billions of messages compressed into strands thinner than a human hair. This technology exploded in the 1990s. During the dot-com boom, the world suddenly needed faster communication, faster business, instant updates. So companies began racing to lay cables from continent to continent. On July 16, 2000, the TAT-14 cable connected the United States to the United Kingdom, France, and beyond. A system capable of moving information across the Atlantic in a blink. Soon, hundreds more followed. A web of light wrapped around the Earth. Today, these cables carry everything. YouTube videos, government orders, online banking, GPS signals, military intel, even satellites. Yes, satellites depend on undersea cables to transmit their data back to the world. This is the internet's backbone, not in orbit, not in the clouds, but on the seafloor. And the most powerful owners of these cables are no longer countries. They are companies. Google and Meta, Amazon and Microsoft. Tech giants have become infrastructure giants. Google alone owns or partners in over 70 undersea cables, including the Dunant cable launched in 2020, connecting the US and France, with a staggering capacity of 250 terabytes per second. Corporate power now lies beneath the ocean, not in boardrooms, not in satellites. These cables connect data centers, the real cloud. Massive buildings filled with servers in California, Ireland, Singapore, and Tokyo. The ocean is the highway between them. But in our rush for speed, we ignored the cost of vulnerability. We built a world where every second of life depends on glass threads that can be snapped by a ship's anchor. We built a global economy on a foundation we barely understand. We convinced ourselves the internet was unstoppable. That connection was permanent, guaranteed. Yet all of it, our communication, our money, our security, lies in places where a submarine or even a natural disaster could destroy it instantly. And as the cables spread, so did the danger. Because whoever controls the fibers, controls the future. Nations began to notice. Armies began to plan. The ocean became a frontier of power. What started as a quest for connection has turned into a struggle for control. This invisible system is now the most strategic asset on Earth, and the world is preparing for the moment someone decides to break it. Before the world was connected by light, it was separated by time. A message from New York to London took 10 days by ship. 10 days of waiting. 10 days of danger. 10 days where wars could start or peace could fall apart before the message even arrived. This slow, fragile world was about to change forever. In the mid-1800s, a determined businessman named Cyrus Westfield looked at the Atlantic Ocean and saw not a barrier, but a bridge. He believed a single cable could unite continents. That communication should move, not in days, but in moments. People laughed at him. They called him foolish. The ocean was too deep, the pressure too strong. Storms would rip everything apart, but Field didn't care. Failure wasn't a reason to stop. It was proof that success was needed. He gathered engineers. He raised money. He convinced governments to join his impossible mission. And in 1858, after years of setbacks, two great ships, the USS Niagara and HMS Agamemnon, sailed into storm-torn waters carrying a single fragile telegraph cable meant to change the world. Day after day, they laid the line into darkness deeper than mountains are tall, thousands of meters down where no human had ever seen. When the final connection was made between Valentia Island in Ireland and Trinity Bay in Newfoundland, Canada, the world held its breath. And then it worked. A message from Queen Victoria to US President James Buchanan traveled across the ocean in minutes, not weeks. Minutes. The impossible had become real. Distance had been defeated. Newspapers called it the eighth wonder of the world. Investors proclaimed a new age of progress. Leaders saw the power of instant communication, quick decisions, quick commands, quick control. The world suddenly became smaller. But history is rarely kind to pioneers. Just 3 weeks later, the cable failed. Its insulation cracked. Signals flickered and died. The ocean reclaimed its silence. Field was mocked again. Critics called it a hoax. The triumph seemed lost, but the idea refused to die. Engineers went back to work. Thicker insulation, better technology, stronger ships like the SS Great Eastern, the largest vessel of its time. In 1866, they tried again. This time, the cable lasted. It sparked a revolution. Telegraphs multiplied. More lines crossed oceans and seas. Empires grew faster. Markets expanded. News traveled instantly. And soldiers learned a terrifying truth. If you cut the cable, you cut the nation. During World War I, Britain intercepted and destroyed Germany. Undersea cables on day one, isolating an empire before the first major battle even began. Humanity had learned a lesson that would shape every future conflict. Control communication equals control power. A single cable turned technology into strategy, the ocean floor into a battlefield, and information into a weapon. What began with a telegraph has grown into a global system we depend on every second. But the same weakness remains. Our world can still be silenced. One break, one cut, one act of sabotage. The invention that connected civilization also exposed its most fragile point. And in the century that followed, nature and enemies would prove just how easily those lifelines could snap. War is not only fought with guns and bombs. Sometimes, the deadliest weapon is silence. The moment undersea cables connected nations, military leaders realized a terrifying truth. If you cut the line, you cut the country. This strategy exploded into reality on August 4, 1914, the first day of World War I. British forces launched one of the very first attacks of the war. They didn't target a base. They didn't target soldiers. They targeted communication. Under orders from the Admiralty, British ships located and destroyed Germany's undersea telegraph cables. Nations guarded the ocean routes like nuclear launch sites today. German U-boats hunted for Allied lines. The Allies tapped and traced Axis cables. Submarines lurked in silence, trying to sever lifelines hidden in the deep. Every cable carried strategy. Every cable carried secrets. Control of the ocean floor was control of the war. And spying didn't stop when the bombs did. By the Cold War, espionage turned cables into silent battlegrounds. One of the most daring missions took place in 1971, Operation Ivy Bells. A U.S. Navy submarine, the USS Halibut, slipped into Soviet waters and found a key military communication cable off the coast of Kamchatka. Divers attached a recording device without cutting the line. For 10 years, the US listened to Soviet naval conversations straight from the source. Pure, unfiltered intelligence from a single cable. The ocean became the most valuable battlefield on Earth. Today, that battlefield has grown larger and far more dangerous. Instead of a dozen telegraph lines, we now have hundreds of fiber optic cables carrying nuclear commands, financial markets, military surveillance, and every voice on the planet. But the vulnerability remains the same. Cut the line, cripple the nation. In a future conflict, the first strike might not be visible. No explosions, no alarms, just a quiet break in the darkness of the deep. History has already shown us what happens when cables become targets. Our world today has far more to lose. As we move deeper into the digital era, the weakness that shaped our past threatens our future. Because if those lines snap again, the silence will return. The most powerful threat to the internet is not a hacker, not a foreign army, not a super weapon in space. It's nature, accidents, random chance. A single careless moment can silence a nation. Undersea cables are tougher than before, wrapped in steel and armor, but the ocean is stronger. And human activity is relentless. Earthquakes, anchors, and fishing nets are responsible for more than 70% of all cable failures. Every year, over 100 breaks occur, quiet disasters most people never hear about, but sometimes the silence is too loud to ignore. On December 26, 2006, a 7.0 earthquake struck the seafloor near Taiwan. It crushed and twisted multiple cables at once. Asia's digital arteries snapped in seconds. Stock markets couldn't trade. Banks couldn't transfer money. Companies from Tokyo to Singapore saw their communications slow to a crawl. Millions watched their internet fade into a spinning wheel of waiting. It took weeks to fully repair the damage. Asia learned the truth that day. Natural disasters now hit the internet first. Then came a smaller shock, but just as revealing. In October 2022, two main cables serving the Shetland Islands, north of Scotland, were mysteriously severed. Phones, banking, internet, suddenly gone. One cut total isolation. A modern society knocked offline overnight. Police warned citizens, if something goes wrong, there is no way to call for help. It wasn't the first time. It won't be the last. In January 2023, a cable serving Yemen failed in the Red Sea during ongoing conflict. Millions lost connection to the world. The hospitals struggled to request supplies. Journalists couldn't report the truth. Families in fear were left unheard. Each incident different, each outcome the same: panic, and a reminder of how dependent we have become. But what makes these breaks so terrifying is not just the damage, it's the delay. There are only a few dozen specialized ships on the planet capable of lifting a cable from thousands of meters below and repairing it in the crushing dark. If one is busy or far away, you'll wait. If the weather is rough, you'll wait. If tensions rise between nations, you'll wait. The world continues to spin, but disconnected countries sit silently on the edge of chaos. Every break is a warning. Every blackout is a lesson. We built a civilization that cannot go offline, yet the wires that keep us alive can be broken by a storm or a careless anchor dragging across the seabed. These fractures show us the danger without an enemy. Imagine what would happen if someone tried to cause them on purpose. The ocean has already proven how fragile the system is. Now imagine a hand deliberately reaching into the deep with the intent to cut. We have seen what nature can do. Next, we face something far more dangerous: human ambition. The internet is a global network, but it has weak spots. Places where the world's data is squeezed through tiny passages beneath the sea. Hit one of those points, and the planet goes dark. These are choke points, narrow routes where dozens of undersea cables run side by side. If something happens there, the damage doesn't hit a country, it hits the world. One of the most dangerous choke points sits between Africa and the Middle East, the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. Nearly 17% of the world's internet passes through this narrow corridor. If those cables snap, Europe, Asia, and Africa lose their digital heartbeat, and it has happened. In January 2008, multiple cables were accidentally cut near Alexandria, Egypt. Huge sections of the Middle East and India lost internet access for days. Trade slowed. Banks struggled. Governments struggled to communicate. One tiny location triggered chaos across 3 continents. Another fragile zone lies in northern Europe, the English Channel. It's one of the most cable-dense places on Earth. Over 100 lines entering the continent crossed this narrow stretch. If someone targeted it deliberately, Europe's power centers could fall silent overnight. Military forces know this. That's why NATO warships now patrol the area, watching for suspicious vessels moving too close to the seabed. Then there's Southeast Asia, the Singapore Strait. Billions of people depend on the cables that pass through these shipping lanes. Anchors drag, fishermen cast nets, and nations compete for dominance in waters filled with tension and territorial claims. One strategic strike here would hit global stock markets before anyone knew what happened. The truth is unsettling. We concentrated too much power into too few places. Maps of the cable network look like spiderwebs, but zoom in, and the web narrows into a handful of threads holding entire societies together. Governments used to treat these maps as mundane infrastructure charts. Now they are studied like war targets, circles drawn around weak points, plans made in case the worst happens. Because the worst is not science fiction. The Shetland Islands blackout in 2022 was caused by cuts in a cable-dense region. Yemen's 2023 outage came from a hit in a narrow maritime zone. Every recent failure has sounded the same alarm. We know exactly where to attack if we ever choose to. So today, navies shadow the choke points. Surveillance drones watch the waves. Repair ships stand ready to move at the first sign of trouble. But it may not be enough. The ocean is too large. The routes are too vital, and the cables are still too fragile. These choke points are the Achilles heel of the modern world. If a hostile nation, or even a well-trained group decided to hit them all at once, the result would be immediate. Global meltdown, markets collapsing, communications severed, nations blind and powerless. Humanity will be left asking how we allowed our future to depend on a few hidden spots beneath the sea. The ocean has shown us the danger. Now the world must decide whether to protect these lifelines, or wait for the moment they are cut. The most powerful nations on Earth aren't nations anymore. They are tech giants. We think governments control the internet, but the real power is held by companies whose headquarters sit in Silicon Valley. Companies that build digital empires deep beneath the ocean. Google and Meta, Amazon, Microsoft. These 4 corporations now own or control most new undersea cables. They move more data than any government. They own the infrastructure that keeps the global economy alive. Why? Because governments move slowly. Tech companies move at light speed. They needed faster connections between their data centers in California, Ireland, Singapore, Japan, so they built their own cables without waiting for politicians. This shift began quietly. No announcement, no approval request, just construction in the deep. By 2010, Google was already investing in major cable projects. Today, the company is involved in over 70 cable systems around the world. One of them is the Dunnan cable, launched in 2020, linking Virginia in the United States to France. Its capacity, 250 terabytes per second, enough to send millions of movies every single second. Meta followed, Amazon followed, Microsoft followed. Together, these companies now own over half of all new subsea cable capacity being built. They are not just websites, they are infrastructure powers. They do not ask for permission from the countries they pass beneath. They simply pay, they control, they expand. And here's the uncomfortable question: who owns the internet? Is it the country whose coast the cable touches? Or the corporation that paid for the fiber inside? If a government wants to protect its communication, it must negotiate with a company. If a nation wants to stay connected, it must rely on a corporation's cable maps. Imagine a war where a company is forced to choose a side. Whose traffic do they protect? Whose data do they cut? This is not a hypothetical. During global tensions, the US has pressured tech firms to avoid connecting certain countries, especially where China seeks influence. Speaking of China, it is building its own cable empire. Huawei Marine has laid networks across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Critics warn these systems may be designed for surveillance or shutdown in times of conflict. So now, the world's communication is being divided into digital spheres, not east and west, but corporate versus corporate, network versus network, cloud versus cloud. Defense officials are alarmed, because wars are no longer fought only by armies. They are fought by whoever controls the lines of communication. Tomorrow's conflict may look like this. A corporation's cable is cut, its data centers are attacked, its networks are hijacked. Suddenly, billions of people aren't just offline, they are powerless. This is the new global reality. Tech giants are now geopolitical superpowers. Their undersea empires hold the fate of nations in glass fibers no thicker than a hair. And if these silent rulers of the deep ever become targets, the world won't just lose the internet. It will lose the systems that hold civilization together. The next chapter of this story dives deeper into that danger, a threat growing quietly beneath the waves. A new Cold War hidden in the dark. The next Cold War won't be fought in the sky. It won't be fought with tanks or fighter jets. It will be fought in silence. Beneath the waves, undersea cables have become the new high ground of global power, and the nations that control them control the future. No country understands this more than China. Over the last decade, China has poured billions into cable projects across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. A strategy called the Digital Silk Road. More than 60 countries now rely on Chinese-built systems to stay connected to the world. And many of those cables were built by a company called Huawei Marine Networks. Critics fear these cables could become surveillance pipelines, monitoring traffic from continents far from China's shores. The United States and its allies see this as a growing threat. They argued that if China controls the cables, it controls the data inside them. So the US has fought back. Projects linking to places like Hong Kong have been blocked. New cables are rerouted to avoid Chinese landing stations. Western governments demand secure infrastructure, meaning no Huawei components. But China isn't the only player. Russia has taken a darker route, not by building cables, but by hunting them. Western intelligence agencies have tracked Russian submarines lurking near critical lines in the North Atlantic. One vessel, the Yantor, is equipped with deep-sea drones designed to tamper with cables, not to explore the ocean, but to prepare for a moment when cutting a cable could cripple an enemy. These operations are not loud. They leave no smoke, no debris, just silence. Espionage has returned to the ocean floor. During the Cold War, the United States secretly tapped Soviet lines. Now, the same tactics are upgraded with modern fiber optics. A tiny device attached to a cable can copy everything flowing through it. Military chatter, corporate plans, the private lives of millions. This spy war is already happening, but the public only sees the calm surface of the sea. Military journals warn that in a real conflict, the first strike will not be heard. there will be no explosion, just a sudden blackout. Imagine waking up and learning that the world has already entered World War III, and the opening attack was a silent cut to miles underwater. The enemies we fear will not aim at soldiers. They will aim at the systems that keep countries alive. And those systems lie in the dark, unguarded, waiting. This is the new Cold War, a war of cables, surveillance, and vulnerability. A war where the winner is the one who leaves the other side in digital darkness. As tensions rise, the question is no longer if these lines will be targeted, but when. The battle for connection has become the battle for control. And the next chapter shows how quickly civilization could fall if the ocean decides to turn off the world. It starts with silence. No alarm, no explosion, just silence. A few cable breaks in the wrong places, and the world changes forever. The first shockwave hits the financial system. Stock trades freeze, credit cards stop working. International payments on SWIFT go offline. Banks close their doors, not by choice, but because they are blind. Money becomes trapped in computers that can't talk to each other. Global markets collapse before anyone has time to react. The second shockwave hits transportation. Flights are grounded. Air traffic control systems fail because radar and communication lines depend on those cables. Cargo ships float with no instructions. Trucks can't navigate. Gas stations can't process payments. Modern movement stops. Then the hospitals feel the cut. No database access, no telemedicine, no supply requests. Patients who rely on remote monitoring suddenly vanish from the system. Lives hang in darkness. Emergency services try to respond, but phones fail. Dispatch centers go mute. Help can't be called. Help can't arrive. Inside homes and cities, panic grows fast. Social media goes silent. People can't message loved ones. No news, no updates, no answers. When truth disappears, fear becomes the loudest voice. Rumors spread quicker than facts. Disinformation fills the void. Conspiracies shape reality. Trust collapses. Meanwhile, the nations that still control working cables suddenly hold all the power. They become gatekeepers of information and connection. Their enemies are thrown into digital darkness, helpless while they stay online and informed. It isn't fantasy. We've seen the preview. In 2006, Asia slowed to chaos when cables near Taiwan snapped. In 2022, a single region of Scotland went dark overnight. In 2023, a war zone in Yemen was cut off from the world. But all those incidents were isolated, accidental. Now imagine the same thing happening everywhere at the same time. Imagine multiple choke points hit in a single coordinated strike. Imagine lines cut in the Red Sea, the English Channel, the North Atlantic, all within minutes. Civilization would fail before governments could even respond. No missiles, no troops, just one silent weapon, a blade cutting through a cable. The world we built depends entirely on connection. Our power, our economies, our medicine, our governments, our voices. One break is an inconvenience. Several breaks are a crisis. A synchronized attack is the end of the digital age. Humanity has forgotten that our greatest systems are still fragile. Our future runs through wires hidden in darkness. And if those wires go dark, so does the world. The only hope we have is to finally protect what we have always ignored. The world has finally realized the truth. Our greatest vulnerability is hidden beneath the waves. We built a civilization on cables no thicker than a thumb. Now we must protect them like our lives depend on it. Because they do. Governments used to ignore these wires. They were just infrastructure. Invisible. Forgettable. But today, defense leaders talk about cables. The same way they talk about nuclear power plants. Vital. Strategic. Too important to fail. New projects are being launched. Stronger armor. Deeper routes. Backup lines far from shipping lanes. But engineers admit the truth. It will never be enough. Satellites. They can help with emergencies, but they cannot replace the ocean network. Not now. Not ever. Satellites are slower, weaker against massive data flow. The world's heartbeat remains underwater. So, nations have turned to protection. Navies patrol the choke points. Warships shadow suspicious vessels. Submarines hunt submarines in the silent deep. In 2023, NATO created a special task force dedicated to undersea infrastructure defense. Their mission: track threats, Guard cables. Prepare to respond before the world goes dark. Drones and underwater robots scan the seafloor for tampering. Surveillance systems now watch not just the skies but the ocean floor. If the next attack comes, someone must be there to see it happen. At the same time, engineers are racing to build redundancies, new lines across safer routes. Like the To Africa cable, a massive 45,000-kilometer loop being deployed to protect African connectivity, or new transatlantic cables that avoid conflict zones and add more resilience to the world's busiest routes. But protection is no longer only about technology. It is about global cooperation. Countries are forming alliances to defend the invisible web we all depend on, sharing intelligence, mapping vulnerabilities, training for the day when someone tries to cut us off. Because everyone now understands, the first strike of the next war might not hit a city, it might hit the sea floor. And if defenders fail, the battlefield above will fall into chaos. This is the final warning the ocean is giving us. We cannot take connection for granted. We cannot pretend the internet is invincible. We cannot wait for disaster to learn how much we depend on a single, fragile system. Every moment of life, every bank transaction, every flight path, every medical record, every message between loved ones depends on cables stretching through darkness miles below the waves. They do not glow, they do not move, they do not make a sound, but they hold the world together. If they snap, we snap with them. Humanity's progress, our future as a connected species, rests on wires we almost never think about. So now, we must protect them, guard them, support them, invest in them. Because no matter how advanced we become, no matter how many rockets we send to space, our world still depends on the quiet lifelines sleeping on the seafloor. The invisible empire beneath the waves is what keeps civilization alive, and if we fail to defend it, the lights won't just flicker, the world will go dark forever.